When the first jeer echoed through the studio, I felt it wrap around my ribs tight as piano wire. It was late afternoon and the windows laced the floor with thin rectangles of Parisian sun, dust motes spinning in the haze as if time itself hovered, reluctant to move forward. I stood at the long table, my voice trembling just enough as I pitched my story idea, a dossier as thick as my palm and a passion I could barely keep under control. Across the table, beyond my own sweat-dampened hands, the circle of colleagues watched, scarves and spectacles and easy half-smiles cocooned in cigarette smoke. "You must be joking," snapped Chantal, her amber earrings swinging as she leaned back. "No one wants another corruption expose, especially not from a child with no contacts and what a notebook." The others laughed, polite at first, then openly. It was harder to look at Nicolas, my cousin, big-shouldered and constantly shining with confidence, because his was a softer kind of cruelty delivered with pity. He shook his head, lips barely moving. "Marie, you are talented, but," Nicolas shrugged as if weighing words, "why not write about cafe culture for the tourists, or maybe a profile about genealogies? Something easy." There was, I suppose, a chance for me then to back down, to melt into my own skin, apologize for thinking I had caught the scent of something rotten in a corner of Paris that didn't belong to my family or theirs. But I only nodded, taking each word and folding it inward with the rest of the little wounds. The editor clapped his hands. "Enough, let's move on," and the rest of the day blurred, the clatter of typewriters and voices muffled by shame and the stubborn, growing seed of resolve. I left last, the office emptied out for the evening, and the sun filtering out from behind the Horseman rooftops. My reflection in the window caught me, angular, unyielding, with the wild gaze of someone hanging from the last rung over an abyss. The city below buzzed with motorbikes and laughter, moving too quickly for my dreams to wedge themselves inside. I walked home, my steps quick, my mind slower, spinning. In the apartment, tired houseplants blinked in the hallway, and the savory perfume of onions greeted me before my mother did. She didn't let me set my coat before asking, "How was your pitch?" I couldn't answer right away. She waited, gentle and patient in her worn slippers. They didn't believe in it, or in me. She nodded, a small, sad smile. She'd heard this before in different words, maybe from my father or her own long-dead mother, who'd swept streets in Montmartre. "Will you keep going, Ma Phils?" "Yes," I said, surprising both of us. Silence filled the kitchen. My determination, sullen and new, pressed outward into that space. It was the only answer that mattered now. For weeks I worked on my story in secret, after work, before dawn, every hour I could steal from fatigue. My subject was a construction scandal, contracts signed below the table, upmarket buildings rising for the rich, while regulations lay in ruins. No one wanted to talk, especially not to a young woman with only a press badge and too much hope. I learned to listen at cafes, to let silence bloom between questions, to trust patience. There were days I shook with doubt, hearing Chantal's laughter in my mind, but I pressed further, slipping into building sites, photographing documents, piecing together threads of language in overheard conversations. My family passed us at dinner, slow sips, faster judgments, watched with a kind of affectionate condescension. My mother only pressed a hand to my back when I passed behind her in the kitchen. Then spring faded, rain swept the city clean, and one evening a man in a charcoal suit approached me at a bar near the Gare du Nord. He'd seen me, recognized the mark of the desperate and the earnest, and slid a brown folder across the sticky countertop without a word. The evidence inside was astounding. Emails, photos, signed contracts. My heart hammered. There was risk here, real, dangerous risk, but I clung to it, shaping my fear into resolve. I wrote the story, every comma trembling with hunger, every line honed by sleepless nights and stubbornness. I sent the finished piece to 3 major dailies under my own name. All 3 rejected it, with apologies boxed in corporate phrases and a faint echo of that studio laughter. It should have broken me, but silence by now had become my companion. I sent it to one last paper, a small, scrappy online journal known for taking risks. The editor replied within an hour, "Can you meet tomorrow?" When the article was published, it was as if the city itself paused to listen. Within days, my phone buzzed with calls for interviews, ministries opened investigations. My story painted the corruption in colors so clear and unignorable that not even the well-dressed could turn away. For the first time, my own name scrolled beneath headlines that didn't obscure or belittle it. But success in Paris is fickle, and the price of light is that you see every shadow. Some congratulated me, more envied or whispered. My old studio, Chantal and the rest, publicly ignored me, privately spread rumors. Nicolas, in his quiet way, grew distant. My triumph, it seemed, was a private, lonely thing, yet the work grew. I became the go-to for investigations that mattered. I traveled, I won awards. The city changed just a little. One of the construction sites was razed, and the families displaced by the corruption were compensated. I watched all this unfold on the screens in my small apartment and wondered if, in another world, things would have been easier if I'd written about cafes after all. But the seed that I'd carried, the one planted that cruel afternoon, kept rooting deeper. When I found myself invited to lecture at universities, to speak on morning panels across the river, I realized that resolve formed not in applause, but in the silent gaps left by rejection. Years passed. My mother died just after her 61st birthday, slipping away quietly, her hand in mine, her eyes full of pride she never said aloud. The city blurred for a while. My siblings married, moved to the suburbs. Paris, for a time, became a city I observed rather than inhabited. One morning, late September, when the sky was clear and blue as a pressed iris, an invitation arrived in my inbox, embossed header, gold font, unmistakable. The old studio would be hosting a forum for international journalists. Chantal would moderate. Nicolas, now a senior editor, would present. I sat very still, letting the silence swell. My fingers moved without me typing a reply. Yes, I would attend. That night I couldn't sleep. Past and present twisted like sheets, a swirl of memory and old humiliation. I could feel the studio, the wood of the long table, the echo of laughter. The wound was a scar now, tight but no longer raw. The day arrived. I ironed my best suit, navy blue with a crisp white blouse. The metro rumbled beneath me, passengers jostling, the hot metal scent of morning. I arrived early, watched as attendees trickled into the lobby, briefcases clutched, badges around their necks. The studio looked unchanged. Same tall windows, same cityscape beyond, only now I saw it framed by years and not by fear. Inside, the air buzzed with old and new energy. Chantal greeted me at the door, eyes flickering once with surprise, then smooth as always. "Marie, you are punctual as ever." "Nostalgia," I answered, matching her smile. "I see you've done well." The others circled, some with warmth, others with the polite reserve of people who don't quite remember what they said or why it mattered. Nicolas, older, his hair thinning, reached to squeeze my shoulder. "Well, it's good to have you back, cousin." His tone hovered between apology and uncertainty. The forum began. Presentations rolled out, slides, data, polite claps. I sat quietly, absorbed, letting the rhythm of their practiced words fill the air. When my turn approached, Chantal introduced me. The tone was clipped, almost resentful. "And now, Marie Dumas will present her latest investigation, fresh from her travels, no doubt." I walked to the front, palms dry, mind clear. I did not tremble. I clicked through slides showing my recent story. Corruption run even deeper, this time in international real estate and money laundering, a web that had ensnared even higher places. The evidence was irrefutable. Signatures, photographs, recordings. I watched as each face in the audience changed, not bored, not condescending this time, but attentive, uneasy. But it was what I revealed next that quieted the room entirely. The construction project at the heart of my old investigation had, I demonstrated, led directly to a wave of policies that had changed the city's laws, bettering conditions for workers and tenants. I played a short video clip, families interviewed in creaky kitchens, their gratitude raw and unscripted. The last slide was a headline bearing my name from Le Monde, one that even the proudest couldn't dismiss. Dead silence, then applause. Real, sustained applause, not for a spectacle but out of respect, out of the recognition that resolute pursuit of truth still mattered. I saw Chantal watching, her mouth a tight line of something like regret. Nicolas, for the first time, smiled without a hint of doubt. Afterward, the skeptics approached. Some stammered compliments, others asked questions about process and stamina. Chantal, when we were alone for a moment by the window, cleared her throat. "I was wrong about you," she said, gaze fixed on the city beyond. "I was unfair. I decided not to press the moment." I nodded, letting her discomfort lie between us. The days of longing for her validation had made way for something sturdier. Later, as the crowd filtered out, Nicolas pulled me aside. "Marie," he said, looking older and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, "everyone always wants to be the one who made it. I didn't want to see you outgrow us, but you did. I'm proud of you, genuinely." We stood for a moment. The studio emptied, the afternoon light spilled over the parquet floor. I felt no bitterness. Instead, there was an echoing sense of return, a recognition that the real journey wasn't about proving anyone wrong, but about listening to the silence that had always stood ready to sustain me if I paid attention. I walked home as the leaves skittered along the avenue, the city alive with its secrets and possibilities. My story would not end in applause or in rejection, but in the quiet conviction of a life shaped by resolve and the continuous, relentless search for truth. When I entered my apartment, setting my satchel on the table, I paused by the window. The silence, vast and soft as velvet, met me. I welcomed it in.